Hello and welcome. This is David with SanTan Solar. Today we're going to be talking about three technologies that are very prominent in solar production, solar power systems. Now, the three technologies we're going to talk about today is going to be string inverters, microinverters, and optimizers. Now, these three technologies are very crucial in getting the DC voltage that's produced by a solar panel and converting it into AC power for your home or for the grid. Now, all these technologies have great benefits and are usable for various scenarios, but they do have their benefits and they do have their drawbacks. So just stay tuned and we'll be talking about those shortly. Now, the first thing we're going to be talking about are string inverters. You most likely have seen most of these in productions for DIY solar power or production for people who are building small homes, RVs, campers, something like that, where they use a string inverter, or just an inverter as it usually is called. Now, these inverters are great. They're budget friendly. They're a proven technology. They've been around for years and they've shown that you can do a lot with these things. The fact that they come in various sizes and configurations makes it really easy to install. It doesn't require a lot of complex wiring. Most systems are complex to the beginner, but for these particular types, they're really much more simpler design. And with string inverters are units that are just all in one like this. And these string inverters, you get your various panels together in strings, hence string inverters. And you go ahead and put it up to the configuration of what each string inverter is. Now, this is just a small one right here, but they do come in various sizes. Some are very mammoth sized, some are very small, and each has its purpose. Now, the nice thing about the fact that these are such a simple design, that it makes it easier for the new person or for those who are just wanting to put this in smaller confined spaces. This is the way to go about it. It's really small, really easy to hook up. These are also great for large, unshaded installations. There's a few things about string inverters you should know about. One is that string inverters, when used in your system, they are a single point of failure. Meaning, if something was to go wrong with your string inverter that you have here, that either the charge controller part of it or the inverter part of it fails or has issues, your whole system is affected. That's unfortunate. But it's relatively easy to get this one out, put it back in, get you back up and running again. Another thing is that due to the fact that they are string inverters, in other words, you have strings together in parallel, it doesn't monitor individual panels. So if there's a panel or a string that's having issues, it affects the whole system. We discussed in earlier videos about series and parallel and putting panels in together. The problem with this is that troubleshooting on a string inverter is a little more challenging. You have to test where your array is going wrong, if there's a problem, which you have to then narrow down to the individual string. If you have to check the string, then if you know that string is not working, you have to go and check the individual panels. It can be a little arduous and a little bit more challenging since it doesn't really give you that specifics as to where the problem is. So you have that issue to go on with that. The other technology we're going to be talking about, what people really like to use, and that would be called microinverters. Now, this particular microinverter is from Enphase. It's an IQ8+. And what microinverters do is that they attach individually to each panel. What these will do is they'll convert that DC power of the panel and converts it right here to AC power, which will then transfer it to a bus line that goes out to a gateway or to a combiner box. And then that way, the Enphase uses something called an Envoy, which then monitors all these microinverters that are attached. Now, the best side about these is that it allows for individual monitoring of your panels. That means that you can sense what each panel is putting out and that each panel is putting out the same amount of power. It makes it great for those with shading issues. Since one panel gets shaded or it has an issue, that's okay because all the other panels are still producing their peak power. They're still producing efficiency. It doesn't knock down the whole string. You can monitor these things individually, so you can actually troubleshoot. Is really simple because you'll know exactly which panels are having issues. Now, there's a downside to all this, of course, is that these are very expensive. Their most cost is because you have to get each individual microinverter for each individual panel. Now, unfortunately, when you have to put these up, it's more complex. There's a lot more wiring to do. There is a lot more, it just takes time because you have to attach this to your frame or to your panel. You have to wire it in. You've got to put it on a on a line, you got to have your end caps in, you got to put it into a little junction box if you have multiple strings. And then of course it has to go and feed into a combiner box, which will have some sort of monitoring device like an Envoy from Enphase, for example. So with microinverters, you just got to keep that in mind. It's a little bit more challenging to put them together. They do cost more, but they're great at monitoring everything, and they really are able to make your system much more efficient. The next technology is optimizers. Now, optimizers are a technology that kind of takes the best of both worlds from string inverters and microinverters. For example, this particular optimizer, which is it's made by Tygo, right here. This one here is a rapid shutdown. Like a microinverter, you attach this to your panels. This will do the monitoring of that individual panel, and it'll optimize its output, which is going to be DC output, to your inverter or, to your inverter, because these will go to any kind of inverter. That's the nice thing about these. You don't have to be a particular kind. As long as you have the transmitter for these things, you can do individual panel monitoring, which is great, just like a microinverter. Also, just like a microinverter, optimizers can help with shading and mismatch panel issues. Just like a microinverter, each individual panel is being optimized by boosting its own performance up so that it stays at its peak performance. So if you have mismatch or shaded, the other panels will still be performing at their peak power because of this optimizer is going to make sure that when it senses that, it's going to try to upgrade and produce the most power from those remaining panels. And they do cost a little less than microinverters. They are a little bit cheaper than microinverters. The drawbacks of the optimizers that there's still an added cost to add them to your system, because you have to attach every single optimizer connected to its own individual panel. That can be a challenge, and it can be very time consuming. Plus there's a lot of cabling and wiring to put up. If you have a mismatched panel, the optimizer will do its best to maintain that, but if a mismatched panel is in there, just like a string inverter, it may affect the overall efficiency, not as greatly as if it was an individual panel you can't monitor, and probably not as efficient as, I say, a microinverter, which will run each panel individually as it has its own power. So due to the variances of these technologies, there are different scenarios for which each one can be best suited for. That microinverters can be considered a better choice than string inverters in certain situations. If there's a lot of shading issues that you need, or you have complex roof configurations, now string inverters are a good choice for the upfront budget. It's a proven technology, it's been around, people use them all the time. They have such a variety of different types of inverters, you can really customize them for your individual power needs. Also that you can put multiple inverters together like this. You can use individual arrays for each individual string inverter to help mitigate any shading or any kind of loss efficiency. That does increase your cost, and it does make your system a little bit more complex and larger than you expect. Now, power optimizers are a good compromise between the string inverters and microinverters. It kind of takes the best of both worlds in that you have individual panel monitoring capabilities. You have rapid shutdown, which means that if you have mounted on a roof or anything like that, these things can shut down the electricity and everything to the panels from the panels in the event of emergency or fire, which is very important because that's a good safety feature. So all three are great technologies. They all have their benefits and some other drawbacks. Any further questions you have, please feel free to call us at SanTan Solar, your one-stop shop for all your solar needs. And this is David, and hope you enjoyed the video. We'll be having some more coming down the pipe, so that just stay tuned and we'll be glad to see you there.